They didn't leave her to die quick. No bullet, no rope. Just the slow way. Like tossing a broken mule out in the flats and waiting for the sun to finish the work. July heat lay heavy on the llano, the kind that splits wood and cooks water in the trough. The sky hung white as bone, and the wind forgot how to breathe. That's when she came crawling up Sam Caldwell's track, a sack clutched to her chest like it held the last beat of her heart. The wind swept across the prairie like a whisper carrying secrets, bending the dry grass and rattling the old wooden shingles of Sam Caldwell's barn. Sam was no stranger to trouble. At 38, with weather-beaten skin and eyes the color of storm clouds, he'd seen more than his share of dust, drought, and death. But nothing, not bandits, not blizzards, not even the Comanche raids of '72 had prepared him for what waited inside that burlap sack. It was late afternoon when he found her, a woman, barely standing, her dress torn and caked with dirt, her dark hair tangled like wild vines. She'd come up the long track to his ranch, clutching that heavy sack to her chest as if her life depended on it. Her lips were cracked from thirst, and her eyes, Lord help him. Those eyes looked like they'd seen the devil himself. Sam had just finished watering his horses when she collapsed against the corral fence. He ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. She was lighter than a sack of grain, but the thing she carried, that sack, was heavy. Heavy enough to make his stomach knot with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. He brought her inside, laid her on the cot by the window, and gave her water. She drank greedily, coughing halfway through, then whispered in a voice so soft it barely carried over the wind, "Please, take them off." Sam froze. Her eyes were on the sack. Not on him, not on the cup in his hand. On that burlap sack like it was alive. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "what's in there?" She closed her eyes, tears cutting paths through the dust on her cheeks. "Just take them off, please." Sam's calloused hands hesitated as he reached for the rough rope cinching the sack shut. Something inside shifted, heavy, uneven, like iron scraping against iron. The sound raised the hairs on the back of his neck. He loosened the knot, his fingers moving slow as a funeral march. When the rope finally gave, he pulled the sack open and stared inside, and what he saw made the blood drain from his face. It wasn't gold. It wasn't food. It wasn't anything a sane man would want on his property. Sam's hands trembled as he loosened the rope around the burlap sack. Each tug of the knot sounded loud in the silence, like gunshots cracking in the dry Texas air. Finally, the fibers gave way, and the mouth of the sack fell open. Inside lay 2 iron shackles, linked by a short length of chain. Rust flaked from the metal like dried blood, but that wasn't what made Sam's breath hitch in his throat. What made his stomach knot was the fresh stain darkening the links, a deep red that hadn't had time to turn brown. Whoever wore these had been bleeding. Recently. And there was something else. Stamped into the curved steel was a mark Sam knew too well. U.S. Army. He swallowed hard. The questions came fast and sharp. Why was this woman carrying government irons through the backcountry? Why did she look half dead, like she'd crawled through hell to bring them here? And why, Lord help him, did he suddenly feel like just touching them might get him killed? Her voice broke the spell, low, urgent, trembling. "Burn them, or bury them. Just don't let them find you with those." Sam stared at her. "Who's they?" Before she could answer, her eyes flicked toward the window. Sam followed her gaze and froze. A faint column of dust rose on the horizon, curling like smoke above the ridgeline. Riders. More than one. Moving fast. Sam let the sack fall shut. His pulse quickened. Whoever those men were, they weren't out for a Sunday ride. He turned back to the woman, her face pale as bleached bone against the shadows of his cabin. "Ma'am," he said slowly, voice tight as a noose, "you'd better start talking. Because out there in that settling dusk, death was coming on horseback." The color drained from her face when Sam asked the question, but her dark eyes held steady on his, eyes that carried storms. "They think I killed him," she whispered. Who? Sam demanded. The officer. The one they chained me for. She swallowed hard, every word tearing out like thorns. But I didn't. I swear on my mother's grave. Sam's gut tightened. A murderer? Or something worse? Outside, the rumble of hoofbeats crawled closer, shaking dust from the rafters. What officer? He pressed. She turned her head slowly, meeting his gaze with a hollow kind of strength. Colonel Rawlins, army man, the kind who'd burn a whole village for 1 coin of gold. He's dead. And they think I did it. Sam cursed under his breath. Colonel Rawlins was a name even out here in the empty miles. Hard as iron and twice as cruel. The kind of man who made enemies easy and buried them deep. The hoofbeats were louder now, rolling like distant thunder. Sam stepped to the window. 3 riders, maybe 4, just clear of the ridge. Not soldiers, but armed, moving like men with purpose. He turned back to her. What's in those irons, ma'am? What are you not telling me? Her lip trembled. For the first time she looked afraid. Truly afraid. It's not the irons they want, she said. Her fingers dug into the edge of the cot, knuckles white. It's what I hid inside them. Before Sam could speak, a sharp knock split the air. The door shuddered under the weight of a fist. A voice barked through the wood, deep and cold as a grave. Evening, Caldwell. We know she's in there. Open up. The pounding came again, harder this time, rattling the door on its hinges. Sam's hand hovered near the Winchester, leaning against the wall, his jaw clenched tight. The riders were closer than he thought. Caldwell! The voice outside was sharp, carrying that mix of authority and arrogance that didn't need a badge to feel dangerous. We ain't here to jaw. Open up! Sam shot a glance at the woman on his cot. Her face was pale as candle wax, but her eyes burned with something fierce. Fear, yes, but under it, defiance. She shook her head slowly, lips forming the word don't. Sam's pulse hammered. He had 2 choices. Hand her over and be done, or take a stand he couldn't walk back from. Out here, the law was whatever the men with guns decided it was. He stepped to the door, voice steady as he called out. What's your business? The answer came like a hammer. We're looking for a half-breed named Ivy Blackhorn. Stole army property, slit a colonel's throat, and lit out into the hills. You seen her? Sam felt his stomach knot. Behind him, Ivy's hands curled into fists. Her whisper barely carried. They'll kill us both if they find me. Sam hesitated, just long enough for the voice outside to turn hard. Don't make us kick this door, Caldwell. We saw tracks leading right up to your gate. Boots scuffed on the porch, shadows shifted in the lamplight. Through the crack in the shutters, Sam counted 3 men, rifles ready, wolves circling. He drew a breath, heart pounding like a war drum. When he spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. Haven't seen a soul all day, he lied. But you're welcome to check the barn. Silence stretched long and taut. Then came a slow, ugly chuckle. We'll do that. And if we find something you should have told us, Caldwell, you'll swing right alongside her. The sound of boots on the steps. Then the door frame shook as a heavy hand gripped the latch. They were coming in. Sam's fingers tightened on his rifle. One wrong move, and this quiet cabin was about to become a slaughterhouse. The latch rattled. Sam planted his boots on the floorboards, forcing his face into something that might pass for calm. The door creaked open, spilling cold dusk light across the cabin floor. 3 men stepped inside like they owned the place. Dusty coats, wide hats pulled low, pistols riding easy on their hips. The one in front had a scar running from jaw to ear, his grin stretched tight as rawhide. Well now, Scar drawled, his eyes sliding over the single-room cabin. Look at this. Caldwell, ain't seen you in town in what, 2 years? You growing hermit whiskers out here? Prefer peace and quiet, Sam said evenly, though his hand itched toward the Winchester by the hearth. Scar's grin widened. Peace, huh? Funny thing, peace don't usually leave blood tracks by a man's gate. Behind him, the other 2 began prowling, peering under the table, kicking at the bedroll in the corner. Sam's pulse hammered like a blacksmith's anvil. Ivy lay hidden behind the woodpile by the far wall, pressed into shadows so deep you could almost forget they held a heartbeat. Almost. Scar's eyes caught on the burlap sack still sitting near the cot. "What's this?" Sam moved quick, planting a boot between Scar and the sack. "Feed," he lied. "For the stock." Scar cocked his head, slow smile spreading as if he could smell the lie. He took another step closer, boots creaking on the planks. "Mind if I take a look?" Sam's throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to swing the Winchester and end this, but 3 guns against 1 was suicide. A board creaked behind him, soft, but enough. One of the men froze, head snapping toward the woodpile. Sam saw the motion out the corner of his eye and felt his gut drop. The muzzle of a Colt swung toward the shadows where Ivy crouched. Her breath hitched loud in the tense silence. "Hell," the man muttered, grin curling like a snake. "Looks like Caldwell's got company after all." Scar's grin turned to steel. His voice dropped, low and cold as winter water. "Step out, darlin'. Slow. Hands where I can see 'em." Ivy didn't move. Sam's fingers curled around the Winchester stock, the decision slamming into place like a hammer on a primer. One way or another, this was about to get bloody. The silence stretched so tight it could snap like rawhide. Ivy's breath trembled in the shadows, her hands inching toward her skirts as if weighing surrender. Sam knew what surrender meant. Rope, tree, and a crowd that didn't care for truth. Scar tilted his head, voice like gravel sliding in a pan. "Don't make this ugly, girl. Come out now." The man with the Colt stepped closer, the barrel glinting in the lamplight. Sam felt the Winchester heavy in his hands, heart pounding a savage rhythm. If he waited another second, she was dead. The decision hit him like lightning. Sam moved. The Winchester roared in the close room, thunder cracking against timber walls. The man with the Colt flew backward, his pistol clattering across the floor as his body slammed the doorframe. The smell of burned powder filled the cabin, thick and bitter. "Kill him!" Scar's snarl split the chaos. Guns cleared leather. Sam dove behind the table as bullets tore splinters from the walls. Ivy lunged for the fallen Colt, her fingers closing around the grip just as Scar swung his pistol toward her. She fired first. The blast bloomed fire and smoke, and Scar staggered, clutching his side with a guttural curse. He dropped to one knee, hatred boiling in his eyes like a man too mean to die easy. The third rider bolted for the door, shouting for the others outside. Sam slammed a fresh shell into the Winchester and fired before the man cleared the porch. The shot caught him square in the back, hurling him into the dust. Outside, hooves thundered. More men, maybe the rest of Scar's pack, closing fast. Ivy's face was pale as ghostlight, but her eyes burned like embers. "They'll bring the whole damn crew," she rasped, her hands shaking as she reloaded the Colt with rounds from the dead man's belt. "We've got minutes, maybe less." Sam crossed the room in 2 strides, snatched the sack with the cursed shackles, and shoved it into his saddlebag. "Then we ain't staying to greet 'em. Move!" They burst onto the porch just as shouts ripped the dusk. Figures crested the rise. 4, maybe 5 riders, rifles raised, teeth flashing in the dying light. Sam threw himself into the saddle, yanking Ivy up behind him. The horse lunged forward under a spur of iron. A shot cracked behind them, splintering the porch rail where Sam's head had been a breath ago. The chase had begun. The prairie opened before them, a vast ocean of dry grass rippling in the blood-red dusk. Sam drove his heels into the gelding's flanks, the animal surging forward like a bullet out of the barrel. Behind them, hooves pounded, a rhythm that meant death closing in. "Hang on!" Sam barked over the wind. Ivy clung tight, her fingers digging into his coat. The Winchester bounced against his leg, and every jolt hammered the wound he'd taken, grazing his shoulder, hot, wet, and burning. A shot cracked behind them, whining past Sam's ear like an angry hornet. Another followed, chewing dust at the gelding's hooves. He veered hard toward a dry arroyo, the only cover for miles. "They won't stop," Ivy shouted, voice raw from the rush of air. "You don't know these men." "Then tell me what the hell they want," Sam growled, teeth clenched against the pain. Her answer came like a knife in the dark. "What's in those irons?" "It isn't just chains, Sam. It's names. Proof." "Proof of what?" "Your army," she spat, bitterness thick in her tone, "selling rifles to outlaws and blaming my people for the blood. That paper in the shackle? It can hang 10 men in uniform, or start a war if it disappears." Sam cursed under his breath. No wonder they were riding like the devils on their heels. This wasn't about a murder. It was about power, gold and guns. Men willing to burn the whole frontier to keep their secret buried. The arroyo yawned ahead, a scar of shadow cutting through the plain. Sam yanked the reins and plunged down the rocky slope, gravel spraying under iron-shod hooves. A bullet sparked off a stone at his boot, then another, closer. He stole a glance back. 4 riders now, dark shapes against the bruised horizon. Scar wasn't among them, either dead or too mean to die slow. But these men were hard and fast, rifles glinting in the last shred of light. They hit the arroyo floor at a dead run, water long gone, leaving only sand and jagged stone. The gelding stumbled, then righted. Sam didn't slow. Ivy leaned close, her breath hot against his ear. "If they take that proof, Sam, they'll kill us and torch every Apache camp from here to the Rio Grande. This ain't just about me anymore." Sam's jaw tightened. He'd only wanted a quiet life, a roof over his head, and the sound of wind in the grass. But tonight, that dream was bleeding out in the dust. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder behind them. Closer. Too close. Sam's eyes swept the shadows ahead, and found salvation in the form of black timber and yawning darkness. "Hold on," he muttered, spurring hard toward the old mine shaft carved into the bluff. "We make that hole, or we die in the open." Behind them, a rifle cracked, and Ivy gasped as something hot and wet splattered across Sam's sleeve. Ivy sagged against him, breath sharp through her teeth. Sam felt the wet heat soaking his sleeve, the stickiness that told him what his eyes hadn't yet seen. "Where?" he barked, voice harsher than he meant. "Arm," she gasped. "Not deep." Sam prayed she was right, because stopping now meant dying. The gelding thundered through the arroyo, hooves pounding like war drums, until the black mouth of the abandoned mine yawned out of the bluff, a wound in the earth big enough to swallow them whole. He jerked the reins, hauling the horse hard left. They shot across broken ground and skidded to a halt at the timbers bracing the entrance. Sam swung down fast, almost ripping Ivy from the saddle. "Move!" he snarled, shoving her toward the dark throat of the shaft. Behind them, gunfire shattered stone, sparking in the twilight. Splinters whined past his head like angry bees. Ivy stumbled but kept her feet, clutching the saddlebag with one hand and pressing the other to her arm where blood dripped through her fingers. Sam grabbed his Winchester and fired 2 quick shots toward the arroyo lip. A rider cursed, reining back into the dusk, but more shadows crested the ridge. Too many to fight, too close to outrun. "Inside," Sam growled. They plunged into the shaft. Darkness swallowed them, cool and damp, smelling of rot and old dynamite. Sam struck a match, its weak flame dancing across rusted tracks and rotting timbers. The tunnel snaked deep into the bluff, a black vein running straight to hell. "Keep moving," he said, voice low now. "They'll come." Ivy staggered forward, her breath ragged. The lamplight carved hollows in her face, but her eyes burned steady. She clutched that cursed sack like it was a lifeline. Sam's mind churned with her words out on the plain. Names, proof, war. He'd thought he was hiding a fugitive. Instead, he was hauling dynamite with a lit fuse, and the whole frontier sat on the powder keg. A shout echoed from outside, sharp as a whip crack. Then boots on stone, spurs clinking like death bells. They were coming in. Sam doused the match and dropped into shadow, heart hammering. He leaned close to Ivy, his whisper hot against her ear. "Listen close. There's an old dynamite locker deeper in. If we can reach it—" "Sam," she hissed, cutting him off. Her eyes gleamed in the dark, wide and fierce. "If they take that paper, everything burns. Not just you, not just me. Towns, villages, all of it." Her voice broke on the last word, but her grip on the Colt didn't tremble. Behind them, light spilled into the tunnel, bootsteps crunching closer. Sam's fingers closed tight on the Winchester. His world shrank to the rasp of his breath, the pounding of blood in his ears, and the question hammering in his skull. Could he kill every man that walked into this shaft before they killed her? The tunnel breathed darkness, broken only by the jittering glow of lanterns edging closer. Voices rumbled low, rough and eager, the kind of men who enjoyed killing as much as breathing. Sam crouched behind a stack of rotting beams, Winchester braced tight. Ivy slid down beside him, cradling her arm with one hand and gripping the Colt with the other. The sack lay between them, its rough fibers brushing Sam's boot like a curse. "3 of them," Ivy whispered. "Maybe 4. Sam's jaw tightened. He could hear spurs, the squeak of leather, the faint clink of a rifle barrel grazing rock. They were moving slow now, wary. Wolves sniffing for blood. Light spilled farther in, a yellow fan crawling over wet stone. Shadows danced across the walls like ghosts. Sam breathed once, deep and hard, then snapped the Winchester to his shoulder and fired. The shot cracked like thunder, slamming a man backward into the timbers. His lantern flew, burst in a splash of flame that hissed out in the damp. Screams ripped the dark as Sam's second shot blasted sparks from the rail iron. "Down!" he barked, shoving Ivy flat as bullets screamed through the shaft. Stone chips stung his cheek like hornets. The gunpowder stench thickened, choking the air. One of the bastards rushed blind into the gloom, revolver spitting fire. Sam swung the rifle like a club, smashing the stock into the man's jaw. Bone crunched. The outlaw dropped without a sound. The third one hung back, voice echoing harsh. "Give us the girl and the paper, Caldwell. You got no stake in this." Sam's laugh was a low growl. "I got one now." He slammed a fresh shell home and froze. A sharp click sounded behind him. Cold steel kissed his neck. "I reckon you do," drawled a voice slick with venom. The fourth man, he'd come in quiet, circling through a side cut Sam hadn't seen. "Drop it," the man hissed. Sam let the Winchester fall. It hit the stone with a hollow clang. Ivy tensed, her Colt half raised. But Sam saw the angle, the bastard's finger tight on the trigger, ready to blow Sam's spine into the dirt. "Smart girl put that gun down," the outlaw sneered, teeth flashing in the dark. Ivy's jaw clenched. For a breath, Sam thought she'd risk it anyway. But then, the Colt hit the ground beside his rifle. The man's grin widened. He shoved Sam forward with the barrel, stooping for the sack. "Hell of a fuss over a piece of paper. Guess it's worth dying for, huh?" As his fingers closed on the sack, Ivy's voice cut like a blade. "Worth killing for, too." She moved fast. Faster than Sam thought she could. Her hand darted to her boot, steel flashing in the gloom. The knife buried deep in the man's thigh. He roared, jerking back, and Sam spun, driving a fist into his jaw hard enough to feel bone give. The gun went off wild, the blast deafening in the tunnel. Sam tore it free and finished the fight with a single, savage crack across the skull. The man crumpled like wet canvas. Ivy snatched the sack, eyes fierce in the flicker of dying flame. Blood ran down her sleeve, dripping onto the earth like dark rain. "Sam," she rasped, breath ragged. "We can't stay. There'll be more, always more." He grabbed the Winchester and hauled her toward the black throat of the tunnel. Ahead, the old dynamite locker waited like a devil's grin, and maybe, just maybe, their only chance to end this. But as they staggered deeper, Sam's mind burned with one truth he could no longer ignore. Ivy had lied. This wasn't the whole story. And if he lived long enough to hear the rest, it might just break him. The tunnel narrowed until Sam's shoulders brushed damp stone. Ivy stumbled behind him, breath wheezing, blood still soaking her sleeve. Ahead, the darkness broke into a crooked alcove braced with splintered beams. Rusted rails ended there, and beyond them, a rotting crate squatted in shadow like a sleeping beast. Sam struck a match, its flicker shivering over stenciled letters. "Dynamite. Looks like Providence wants us alive," he muttered, though his voice was tight as barbed wire. He pried the crate open with the butt of his Winchester. Inside, sticks of powder lay like sun-bleached bones, wrapped in brittle paper. Fuses curled among them like dead snakes. He worked fast, hands sure, despite the pounding in his chest. It had been years since he laid a charge, but some things don't wash out of a man's blood. He jammed a fuse into the first stick, checked the powder, prayed it was dry enough to burn. Behind him, Ivy sank against the wall, her face pale in the guttering matchlight. Her good hand clenched the sack tight, as if the paper inside could keep her alive by will alone. "Sam," her voice cracked. "Save it," he growled. "We ain't dead yet." "No." She dragged in a breath that sounded like pain made flesh. "You need the truth, before you burn for me." He froze, the match burning down toward his fingers. Slowly he turned. "Start talking." Her eyes met his, dark and raw. "That colonel they say I killed. Rollins? He wasn't just selling rifles. He was planning a purge, wipe out the whole Apache nation, blame it on renegades. They wanted war, real war, more forts, more contracts, more gold." Sam's gut twisted cold. "They chained me because I heard it," she rasped. "He was drunk, bragging. Said he'd see my people on stakes before winter. I spit in his face. Next thing I knew, I was in irons. But someone got to him first, and put his blood on my hands." Her voice broke, and for the first time Sam heard the hollow in it. Not rage, not pride, grief. "You think I'm lying?" she whispered. Sam stared at her, at the fire in those eyes, at the way her fingers shook, but never let go of that sack. And Lord help him, he believed her. Bootsteps echoed behind them. Closer now, voices barking orders down the shaft. Sam dropped the match, snuffed it under his boot, and shoved the first charge into a crack in the wall. His voice was a low growl. "Doesn't matter what I think, Ivy. What matters is they'll kill us both to keep that war lit." He struck another match and touched it to the fuse. It hissed, spitting sparks in the dark like a rattler ready to strike. Time to give him a fight worth writing about. The fuse hissed like a snake in the dark, sparks crawling toward death. Sam shoved Ivy deeper into the alcove and spun, Winchester ready. Shadows lunged down the tunnel. 3 men, lantern light throwing them tall against the rock, rifles glinting like fangs. "Caldwell!" one barked, voice raw with fury. "You ain't walking out of here. Drop your iron." Sam didn't answer. He squeezed the trigger. The blast slammed the first man backward into the wall, his lantern shattering in a burst of flame. The tunnel bloomed smoke and thunder, deafening in the stone throat. "Hellfire!" another cursed, diving behind a rotting beam as bullets screamed through the dark. Splinters peppered Sam's face, stinging like hornets. The fuse spit closer to the dynamite, a burning line in the black. 30 seconds. Maybe less. Sam fired again, the recoil smashing his shoulder raw. A man crumpled in the dust, his rifle skittering into the dark. The last outlaw charged, roaring, a knife gleaming like moonlight on bone. Sam swung the Winchester like a club, steel butt crashing into the man's skull. The outlaw went down hard, but his fingers clawed Sam's coat as he fell, dragging them both to the ground. The fuse sizzled. 10 feet from glory. Sam tore free, lungs heaving, and grabbed Ivy's arm. She staggered, the sack clutched tight, blood dripping down her fingers like ink. Together they ran, boots hammering the rails, air thick with smoke and grit. Behind them, a broken voice howled through the tunnel. "You're dead, Caldwell. Both of you. Dead." Sam didn't waste breath to answer. The light at the shaft mouth glimmered ahead, a pale promise in the black. They hit it full tilt, bursting into the night as the earth split open behind them. The blast tore the world apart. Fire belched from the tunnel like the breath of hell, hurling rock and timber sky high. The shock waves slammed them into the dirt, choking them in dust and heat. Sam rolled, dragging Ivy against the shelter of a boulder as chunks of the bluff rained down like the wrath of God. For a long, ripping moment, the night was nothing but roar and flame. Then, silence. Heavy, absolute. Sam lifted his head. The mine was gone. Just a smoking wound in the earth, where death still whispered on the wind. No shouts. No boots. No pursuit. Ivy lay gasping against him, her face streaked with blood and soot. In her arms, the sack was still there, like the devil's dowry clutched to her chest. Sam stared at the firelit ruin, heart pounding a drumbeat of survival and dread. They'd bought time, but not freedom. Not yet, because the men behind this, men with gold in their veins and war in their hearts, wouldn't stop for hell or high water. And God help him, neither would he. Smoke rolled low over the bluff like a dying storm. Sam dragged Ivy through the scrub, his muscles screaming, lungs burning from the blast grit. Each step felt like wading through hell's own ashes. The sack thumped against his thigh with every stride, its weight heavier than iron. He hated the feel of it, hated what it meant. They didn't stop until the mine's ruin was aglow on the horizon. Sam eased Ivy down behind a cluster of mesquite, his ears tuned for hoofbeats. None yet, but they'd come. Fire and gunpowder didn't stay secret long. Ivy slumped against a rock, pale as bleached bone, blood streaking her sleeve. Still, her eyes burned steady. "We can't run forever." "No," Sam said, ripping his bandana to bind her wound. His voice was low, cold as river stone. "But we can make them bleed before they take us." A laugh floated out of the dark, slow, smooth, and sharp as a gambler's blade. "Well now, that's the Caldwell I remember." Sam's head snapped up. A figure eased from the shadows astride a rangy bay, coat hanging open, Colt glinting easy in his hand. The years had carved lines into his face, but Sam knew him by the grin, a grin that once rode shotgun on every sin Sam swore he'd buried. "Harper," Sam said, voice flat. "Should have guessed." "Should have," Harper drawled, swinging down. His spurs whispered in the dirt as he stepped close, eyes sliding over Ivy like a man weighing gold. "Heard you've been busy, old friend. Blowing holes in the earth, killing folks wearing army smiles. That ain't like you. Or maybe it always was." Sam rose slow, the Winchester hanging loose but ready. "Say what you came to say." Harper's grin widened. "Simple deal. Hand over the girl in that sack, and you walk away. Clean. No noose. No bullet." Ivy stiffened, her fingers curling around the Colt in her lap. Sam didn't move, didn't blink. "And if I don't?" he asked. Harper shrugged, easy as a man laying a card on the table. "Then you die here, Sam. Quick, maybe. Slow, if I'm in a mood. Ain't personal, just business." Sam felt the old weight settle on his soul, the kind he thought he'd left in some nameless border town years ago. Harper wasn't lying. He never did. And that made this worse. The moon slid from a cloud, silvering the steel in Harper's hand. His eyes glittered like a rattler in the dark. "Tick-tock, partner," Harper murmured. "Clock's running." Sam's pulse slammed like a hammer. One move, one breath, one choice that'd damn him or save them both. And God help him, he didn't know which way his hand would fall. The moon carved cold light across Harper's grin as he shifted his weight, boots whispering on sand. His Colt hung easy at his side, like a viper waiting to strike. Sam read the angle, the slack in Harper's wrist. If he moved first, he might live. If he hesitated, Ivy would die screaming. "You ain't the kind to throw your life for a half-blood you met yesterday," Harper said softly. circling just far enough to make Sam pivot. "Give her up, partner. Let me clean this mess for you." Ivy's voice cut the night like broken glass. "He doesn't speak for you, Sam." Harper chuckled low. "Sweetheart, I've been speaking for Sam since before you could hold a knife. Ain't that right, old friend?" Sam felt the weight of years pressing like a noose. The robberies, the midnight rides, the blood they left cooling in dust. Harper knew every bone in his closet, and now he wanted another soul tossed on that heap. Sam let his breath out slow, his fingers curling on the Winchester stock. Harper's eyes flicked to the movement. Just enough. The night erupted. Sam dropped and rolled, the Winchester barking fire. Harper's first shot ripped the air above his head, whining off stone. Sam's second blast slammed Harper back a step, his grin splitting in a snarl. "God damn it, Sam!" Harper roared, firing blind as Sam dove behind a mesquite trunk. Bark shredded under lead. Ivy's Colt cracked sharp, spitting flame into the dark. Harper cursed again, then grunted, staggered, clutching his side. "Hell with you both," he snarled, stumbling toward his horse, blood slicking his fingers. His boots dragged furrows as he mounted, spitting hate like venom. "This ain't done, Caldwell. You hear me? It ain't done." The bay tore off into the night, hooves drumming a retreat toward the ridge. Sam rose slow, smoke curling from the Winchester's barrel, breath burning in his chest. Ivy limped to him, eyes wide, face pale but fierce. "You didn't have to." "Yes," Sam cut in, voice low as the grave. "I did. There ain't no road back from here, Ivy. Not for me, not for you." From the bluff behind them, a fresh sound rolled through the stillness. The distant thunder of horses. Many horses. Sam's gut turned to stone. Harper had run, but not alone. He'd fetch more. Men with badges, maybe. Or worse. He grabbed Ivy's arm, his grip like iron. "We move. Now!" They vanished into the hills, shadows swallowed by a sky sharp with stars. And behind them, like wolves closing on a wounded deer, death was riding hard. They hit the mesa at first light, a jagged crown of red rock rising from the desert like the bones of a dead god. The ruins of an old Spanish mission huddled against the cliffside, walls cracked and bleeding dust, its bell tower leaning like a drunken judgment. Sam dragged Ivy through the broken archway, boots grinding on tiles worn smooth by ghosts. His breath burned like whiskey fire, and every muscle screamed for rest. But rest was for men who had time, and time was the one thing running out. Here, he shoved her into the shadow of the altar, where chunks of roof turned the morning light into knives. "Bind that arm tight. You bleed out now. I'll drag you back from hell just to kill you myself." Ivy's lips curved in a ghost of a smile, but her eyes were hard. "Sam, you could still ride. Leave me. Live." He didn't answer, didn't look at her. His hands were busy, fast, stacking broken benches against the doorway, slamming rusted nails into the timber with the butt of his Winchester. An old wine cask rolled into position, sloshing faintly, still half full after God knows how many years. He tore free the cork, dumped the wine, and shoved a dynamite stick inside. "You planning to blow the Lord's house to hell?" Ivy asked softly. Sam glanced up, his face carved in stone. "Planning to make sure the men coming for us don't walk back out." The sound came then, a low, rolling thunder crawling over the mesa. Hooves. Many. Dust boiled on the horizon, and sunlight flashed on rifles. Harper had fetched his wolves, all right. 10, maybe 12 riders, swinging wide to box the ruins like hounds circling a crippled stag. Sam's throat tasted of iron and grit. He slammed the last fuse into the keg and struck a match, his voice calm as Judgment Day. "When they push that gate," he said, sliding the keg into place, "you run for the cliff trail. Take the sack, don't stop till the sun dies." "No." Ivy's voice was iron now, hard enough to cut. She rose from the shadows, her eyes dark fire in the broken light. "I've been running since the day they chained me, Sam." "Not anymore." He stared at her, at the blood, the grit, the quiet fury burning in her bones. And in that raw second, Something fierce and hopeless surged in his chest. The first rider crested the ridge, rifle raised, his shout cutting the wind like a knife. Others fanned behind him, dust clouds boiling like storm clouds of lead. Sam chambered around, his voice low, steady, final. "Then we stand together." The bell tower groaned as the morning split with the crack of rifles, the roar of powder, and the scream of men who thought they were hunting lambs, and found wolves instead. Gunfire ripped the morning wide open. Lead screamed through the mission walls, tearing splinters from the beams. Sam fired back, his Winchester bucking hard, the stock biting his shoulder like a rattler. One rider toppled from his saddle. Another spun his horse to the dust, screaming, "More on the east wall!" Ivy shouted, slamming a round into the Colt with hands slick from blood. Her arm trembled, but her aim was steady. The pistol barked and a man slid from his saddle, his rifle clattering like a dropped prayer. Hooves pounded closer. A voice rose above the chaos, cold and sharp as a coffin nail. "Caldwell, time's up." Harper. He came through the smoke like a ghost on a black horse, long coat whipping, Colt gleaming like a fang. His men fanned wide, circling, the sun glinting on barrels. "Last chance, Sam." Harper's grin cut white in the dust. "Hand her over, or I burn you both right here." Sam stepped into the open, the keg of dynamite at his feet, the match quivering in his fingers. His voice carried across the broken courtyard, calm as judgment. "You so much as breathe wrong, Harper, and we all go to hell together." Harper's smile faltered. His eyes flicked to the keg, to the black snake of fuse trailing like the devil's tongue. The riders shifted uneasily. "You won't do it," Harper said, but his voice lacked its old swagger. Sam struck the match. Flame hissed hungry. "Try me." For a breath, the world held still. Wind, dust, men frozen on the edge of death. Then Harper moved. His Colt roared, the shot slicing fire across Sam's ribs. Sam dropped hard, the match tumbling, straight onto the fuse. The hiss sang through the silence. Harper's face twisted, rage and fear boiling as he spurred forward, howling. Sam rolled, blood hot down his side, his hand clawing for the Winchester. Before Harper closed, Ivy stepped from the shadows like midnight made flesh, the Colt in her hand steady as scripture. "Harper!" He looked up and saw the bullet coming in her eyes before the Colt spat flame. The slug took him clean, ripping him backward from the saddle. He hit the dirt with a sound like a sack of stones, eyes wide, mouth working for words that never came. Sam crawled to the keg, yanking the fuse free just as it kissed the charge. Smoke curled, bitter as sin. For a long second, only the wind spoke. Then the riders broke, spurring hard, dust boiling as they fled into the sun. Silence fell heavy and raw. Sam sagged against the shattered altar, breath sawing. Ivy dropped beside him, the Colt clattering from her hand. Their eyes met, tired, bloodied, unbroken. "You should have run," he rasped. Her smile was faint, fierce. "Not without you." The sack lay between them, soaked and grimy, the secret that almost burned the world. Sam stared at it, then at the wide sky beyond the broken walls. He thought of graves and ghosts, of all the roads behind him, and the one road ahead. "Come on," he said, pushing to his knees with a grunt. "Sun's rising. Time we found out what living feels like." Ivy slipped an arm under his, steadying his weight. Together they walked into the dawn, the mission smoldering behind them, the wind carrying the ashes of a war that almost was. And for the first time in years, Sam Caldwell felt something like hope.